The young and the restless spoilers a fractured bond. The high-stakes quest for reconciliation. Nate had always dreamed of a family united by love and forgiveness, a family where the past, with all its dark and painful memories, could be set aside for the promise of a better tomorrow. In his heart, he believed that reconciliation was possible, that even the deepest wounds could eventually heal with time, understanding, and most importantly, trust. His focus was not just on mending his own relationship with his estranged brother, Damian, but also on bridging the gap between the two young lives caught in the crossfire of their bitter feud, his own son and Amy's. Nate envisioned a future where these children could laugh, play, and share their innocent joys, oblivious to the burdens of animosity and betrayal that weighed down their elders. Yet, the more Nate yearned for this reunion, the more elusive it seemed. Every step towards forgiveness was met with unforeseen challenges that complicated his mission. It was as if the universe itself conspired against him, each twist in fate deepening the chasm between him and Damian. And Damian, once a brother, was now a man whose heart had hardened with resentment and whose actions were driven by a dark purpose. Nate's earnest attempts to bring about a peaceful resolution were continually stymied by Damian's relentless pursuit of his own agenda, an agenda that was shrouded in secrecy and fraught with malevolence. The complexity of the situation became even more apparent when Audra, a trusted confidant whose insights had often been a guiding light in Nate's life, began to unravel the layers of Damian's past. Audra had long harbored suspicions about the true nature of Damian's intentions. In a moment of raw honesty, she admitted certain truths, details about Damian that were as disturbing as they were revelatory. These were not mere snippets of history. They were carefully orchestrated narratives, fabrications that Damian had constructed to mask his real motives. According to Audra, these revelations were not accidental confessions but calculated moves designed to manipulate Nate's perception of reality. Audra's disclosures painted a grim picture. Damian's past was riddled with actions that betrayed the very essence of familial loyalty. The truth was that Damian had always harbored a deep-seated resentment towards Nate, a bitterness that festered over time. This animosity was not born out of mere sibling rivalry, it was nurtured by a series of choices and betrayals that had left irreparable scars on their relationship. But what alarmed Audra the most was not just the existence of this enmity, it was the extent to which Damian was willing to go to ensure his revenge. She had uncovered evidence that Damian was not acting alone. In a chilling revelation, Audra informed Nate that Damian had been collaborating with Holden, a shadowy figure whose own ambitions aligned with Damian's. Together, they had devised a plan to strip Nate of everything he held dear, his money, his assets, and the promise of a peaceful future. For Nate, the revelation was devastating. The man he had hoped to reconcile with was orchestrating a coup against him, a meticulously planned betrayal that threatened to dismantle not only his financial stability but also the very foundation of trust that he had so desperately sought to rebuild. Damian, though bound by blood, had transformed into an adversary capable of ruthless, merciless actions. His willingness to go to any lengths, regardless of the cost, was a stark reminder that sometimes, familial bonds could be twisted into instruments of pain and destruction. The irony of the situation was palpable. Nate's sincere desire to mend the broken ties and create an environment of love and joy for the children was now entangled with a treacherous plot hatched by the very person he hoped to embrace in forgiveness. Each day, as events unfolded with an unsettling rapidity, Nate found himself caught in a maelstrom of conflicting emotions, hope clashing with despair, love intermingled with betrayal. The stakes were higher than ever, and nothing seemed to be as straightforward as it once appeared. Every decision carried with it the weight of potential consequences, and every alliance was fraught with hidden dangers. In the midst of this chaos, Nate was forced to confront an agonizing question: who could he truly trust? Audra, with all her honesty and painful insights, stood as a beacon of truth, urging him to see beyond the facade that Damian had so carefully constructed. Yet, the pull of family, the unspoken bond between brothers, made it all the more difficult for Nate to accept the notion that the man who shared his blood could be so utterly consumed by vengeance. The emotional turmoil was overwhelming. Nate was torn between the irresistible desire to believe in the possibility of redemption and the stark reality that the enemy he faced was someone he had once loved. As the days turned into nights, and plans hatched in the shadows began to take shape, Nate realized that the situation was spiraling out of control. The swift progression of events left little time for contemplation. Every conversation, every clandestine meeting, every whispered secret in the dead of night only served to deepen the mystery of Damian's true intentions. It was clear that Damian's actions were not driven solely by personal vendetta. There was a calculated strategy behind them, a blueprint for betrayal that had been meticulously mapped out in the darkest corners of his heart. The tension between the brothers escalated, and the rift between them widened into an almost insurmountable chasm. Nate's internal struggle was mirrored in the external conflicts that now threatened to shatter the fragile peace of his life. With every new revelation from Audra, the layers of deception peeled away, exposing the raw, painful truths beneath. Damian's alliance with Holden was just the tip of the iceberg, a mere glimpse into a complex web of schemes that had been woven over years, if not decades. The realization that nothing was as it seemed left Nate reeling. The simplicity of a family reunion was replaced by a labyrinth of betrayal, where every step forward seemed to lead to another dead end. In the end, the quest for reconciliation became a bitter lesson in trust and betrayal. Nate was forced to confront the hard truth that sometimes, despite our deepest desires and best intentions, the path to healing is obstructed by forces beyond our control. The road to forgiveness was paved with obstacles, deceptions, hidden agendas, and the unyielding force of a brother's vengeful spirit. The once hopeful vision of a united family, where children could play freely and laughter filled the air, was now overshadowed by the grim reality of a war waged within the confines of blood relations. As events continued to spiral and the plans of Damian and Holden moved inexorably toward their dark climax, Nate found himself at a crossroads. The decision he faced was not merely one of choosing sides or aligning with the forces of good or evil, it was a deeply personal choice that would determine the future of his family and the legacy of trust he had always hoped to build. Could he ever forgive a brother who had become the architect of his undoing? And if he did, at what cost would that forgiveness come, in this high-stakes battle of wills, where every heartbeat echoed with the promise of betrayal and every whisper carried the weight of secrets? Nate's journey became a poignant reminder that reconciliation is not a destination but a treacherous path fraught with peril. With each passing moment, as the plans of the conspirators unfolded and the ghosts of the past loomed large, the question remained, in a world where nothing is as it seems, who can be trusted when the bonds of family are stretched to their breaking point? Nate's internal battle, his desire to heal and forgive, clashed violently with the cold, calculated machinations of Damian and his conspirators. In the twilight of hope and despair, the saga of these two brothers became a microcosm of a greater truth, a truth that in the labyrinth of human relationships, love and hate are often two sides of the same coin, and the quest for reconciliation is as much about confronting one's own inner demons as it is about forgiving the misdeeds of others. The unfolding drama was a testament to the complexities of human emotions and the unpredictable nature of family dynamics. As the clock ticked relentlessly forward, Nate braced himself for what was to come, a confrontation that would force him to decide whether to cling to the hope of reconciliation or to let go of the past entirely, even if it meant embracing a future defined by sacrifice and bitter resolve. In the end, nothing was impossible, and in this rapid cascade of plans and betrayals, Nate was left to navigate a treacherous terrain where every decision could alter the course of his life forever. A tapestry of desperation and deceit, Nate's crossroads of trust and betrayal. In the shadow of looming loss and betrayal, Nate found himself ensnared in a web of emotional turmoil and high-stakes intrigue, a predicament that none could have predicted when he first set out to mend broken familial bonds. The past and present collided in a whirlwind of regret, hope, and treachery as Nate grappled with the fallout of decisions made in haste and the burden of secrets that threatened to unravel everything he held dear. At the heart of this tumult lay Amy, whose fragile health painted a somber backdrop to the unfolding drama. Once the pillar of strength in their family, Amy's once vibrant spirit was now wilting under the relentless assault of an aggressive cancer. Each day, as the disease tightened its grip, she clung to the hope of one last miracle, a reunion with Damian, the brother whose name had become synonymous with both bitter resentment and enigmatic allure. Despite her dwindling strength, Amy held on to a quiet optimism, waiting for Damian's return as if his presence could somehow counteract the darkness creeping into her life. Her frail smile belied the severity of her condition, and even as she teetered on the brink of life and death, she continued to believe in the possibility of reconciliation, a hope that seemed as elusive as it was desperate. Nate, meanwhile, was pulled deeper into a vortex of conflict that was not originally his to bear. The complexities of his family's fractured history were now exacerbated by the explosive mix of Amy's illness and Damian's sinister machinations. What had begun as a genuine desire to bring about forgiveness and healing was rapidly devolving into a perilous mission riddled with unforeseen complications. The more Nate sought to restore harmony, the more he found himself entangled in a labyrinth of deceit that threatened not only his finances and reputation but also the very foundation of trust he had long nurtured. As Nate navigated this treacherous terrain, he was forced to confront the unsettling truth that his path was strewn with pitfalls and perilous alliances. Among the most perplexing and dangerous of these was the enigmatic Audra, a woman whose insights and wisdom had repeatedly saved Nate from the brink of disaster. With a reputation for seeing through the veils of deception and uncovering the hidden motives of even the most duplicitous individuals, Audra emerged as a guiding light amid the chaos. Her revelations had already shaken the very core of Nate's understanding of Damian, exposing a past marred by betrayal, calculated lies, and a thirst for vengeance. Audra's warnings were not mere idle caution. They were hard-hitting truths that cast a long shadow over Nate's already fragile hope of reconciliation. According to her, Damian's actions were not simply those of a misguided brother but the deliberate machinations of a man determined to destroy Nate from within. In a series of chilling confessions, Audra revealed that Damian had forged a treacherous alliance with Holden, a shadowy figure whose interests lay solely in dismantling Nate's empire and eroding the bonds of trust that held his family together. Together, they had orchestrated a plan to strip Nate of his wealth, his assets, and ultimately, his legacy. This revelation was not just a twist in a family saga, it was the catalyst for a catastrophic series of events that would test the limits of loyalty, love, and sanity. Caught in the crossfire of these rival ambitions, Nate's world began to crumble. Every decision he made was tainted by the omnipresent specter of betrayal. Each step forward seemed to lead him deeper into a quagmire of secrets and half-truths, where the lines between friend and foe blurred into an indistinguishable haze. The stakes had never been higher. The fate of his family, the well-being of his son, and the memory of Amy, all hung precariously in the balance. In the midst of this maelstrom, Nate faced a pivotal question: should he trust Audra and follow her advice, despite the inherent risks that came with placing faith in a figure who, though wise, was not immune to the machinations of fate? Audra's guidance, honed by years of navigating the murky waters of deceit, promised a path out of the mess, a way to escape the quagmire of treachery that threatened to consume him. Yet, the cost of such trust was high. To follow Audra's counsel was to acknowledge that the person he had once hoped to save, his estranged brother, Damian, was irredeemably lost to the darkness of ambition and malice. It meant embracing a future where reconciliation, a dream once cherished, might be forever sacrificed on the altar of survival and pragmatism. Nate's internal struggle was palpable. On one hand, he yearned for the idyllic vision of a reunited family, where laughter and forgiveness washed away the scars of past transgressions. On the other, the harsh reality of betrayal and treachery loomed large. Every moment spent deliberating was a moment in which the forces arrayed against him, Damian, Holden, and their malevolent designs, gained ground. The pressure was relentless, and the pace of events left little time for introspection. Every new piece of evidence, every whispered secret unearthed by Audra, chipped away at the fragile edifice of hope that Nate had built. The situation reached a crescendo when the full magnitude of Damian's duplicity became clear. His alliance with Holden was not merely a desperate bid for power, it was a calculated move to obliterate Nate's world piece by piece. The betrayal was all-encompassing, and it left Nate reeling with the realization that his own flesh and blood had become the architect of his undoing. The emotional devastation was compounded by the pressing urgency of Amy's condition. With each passing day, her health deteriorated further, a silent, agonizing countdown to an inevitable farewell. Yet, amidst the despair, Amy clung to the hope of Damian's return, a hope that now seemed as bitterly ironic as it was tragically misplaced. As Nate grappled with these overwhelming forces, the question of trust became a crucible for his soul. Audra, with her unerring clarity and unyielding determination, stood as the sole beacon of rationality in a storm of chaos. Her advice was a lifeline, a means to extricate himself from the treacherous mire of family betrayal and self-destruction. But to accept her counsel was to confront the painful possibility that his lifelong dream of reconciliation might be nothing more than a mirage, a fantasy doomed by the very nature of human ambition and frailty. In this charged atmosphere of impending calamity, Nate was forced to make an agonizing choice. Every moment of hesitation risked further entrenching him in a labyrinth of deceit, while every act of trust in Audra was a step towards severing the bonds of a past that had long been corroded by bitterness. His mind raced with the implications of his decision. Could he truly abandon the hope of familial love and, instead, embrace a more pragmatic, albeit harsh, reality? And if so, what would be the cost of such a surrender? The emotional toll was immense, and the consequences, unpredictable. Ultimately, Nate realized that the path to salvation, if there was one, lay in confronting the duality of his existence, the idealistic dreams of a reunited family and the sobering realities of betrayal and sacrifice. Audra's wisdom offered him a roadmap out of the impending disaster, but it demanded that he relinquish his naive belief in unconditional forgiveness. It required him to accept that some wounds, no matter how deep, might never fully heal, and that sometimes, survival necessitates a cold, unyielding pragmatism. With Amy's deteriorating health casting a long shadow over every decision, and the relentless machinations of Damian and Holden closing in, Nate stood at a crossroads that would define not only his future but the legacy of his family. In the end, as the clock ticked inexorably forward and the pressure of impending calamity mounted, Nate's heart ached with the weight of the choices before him. The promise of reconciliation, once a bright beacon in the darkness, now flickered uncertainly against a backdrop of ruthless ambition and familial betrayal. The road ahead was fraught with peril, a treacherous journey where trust and treachery walked hand in hand. And so, with a heavy heart and a resolve tempered by the harsh truths of his past, Nate took a deep breath and made his fateful decision, to trust Audra, to follow her guidance, and to embark on a path that, while steeped in sacrifice and sorrow, offered the only chance to salvage what remained of his fractured world. In that moment of resolve, Nate understood that his journey was not just about averting financial ruin or outmaneuvering a vengeful adversary. It was about reclaiming his dignity and redefining the boundaries of loyalty and love. The battle ahead was not merely against external foes, but against the inner demons of regret and hopelessness. And as he stepped forward into an uncertain future, Nate carried with him the bittersweet knowledge that sometimes, the hardest choices are the ones that lead us out of darkness and into a sliver of light, however faint it may be. Thus began a new chapter in Nate's life, a chapter where every decision bore the scars of past betrayals, every alliance was forged in the crucible of desperation, and every heartbeat echoed with the dual promise of redemption and inevitable loss. The stakes were immense, the journey perilous, and the outcome uncertain, but one truth remained immutable: in the labyrinth of trust and deceit, one must sometimes forsake the idealistic dreams of yesteryear to build a future that is as pragmatic as it is hopeful.